It's only Tuesday, right? Welcome in. It's going to be a busy day today. Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop for December 10th, 2024. Rapidly approaching the end of the year. A little bit later on this week, we'll look to see if we could start unpacking some of the hundreds of laws that Illinois will put into effect starting January 1st. So be looking forward to that. But we've got tons to tackle today, including 2 different hearings in the U.S. Congress dealing with immigration. And we'll be bringing you the highlights from that tomorrow. But we've got a whole bunch to talk about before then. Also, the latest in the corruption case against former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan, a sitting congresswoman testifying at that corruption trial yesterday in Chicago. We'll hear a little bit of what happened there as well. Plus, Illinois landing on the Judicial hellholes list. What is that? Well, I talked with American Tort Reform Association President Tiger Joyce about their report that came out this morning in detail about Cook County driving Illinois to be what ATRA says is a area of lawsuit abuse and a place that's ripe for tort reform. So we'll talk about that as well coming up here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell for the live show each and every weekday morning for news clips from Illinois and beyond. But also get the podcast here for Illinois in Focus Daily. Just search Illinois in Focus and you'll be able to find it wherever you get podcasts. But also, I want to encourage you to not forget to sign up for the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. Trump's border czar threatens Chicago's mayor with prosecution as the immigration debate heats up. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you for being with us each and every weekday morning. You've got a couple of hearings today in the U.S. Congress. One is being chaired by Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, looking into the incoming Trump administration's mass deportation policies. But then in the Republican-controlled House, you've got a different hearing that's going to be happening, and that tackles what Republicans are ultimately saying is the threats to law enforcement from open border policies. But let's get into it here. Again, good morning. I'm Greg Bishop. Catch this program live in its entirety each and every weekday morning. But you can also get clips of the show and news clips, not just from Illinois, but from across the country and out of Washington, D.C. as well. So be sure to subscribe to America's Talking Network. Tom Homan, Trump's border pick, was in Chicago last night. CBS Chicago reporting out that he made some controversial comments, especially directed towards Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Tom Homan says Trump tapped him to run the biggest deportation operation the country has ever seen. Homan says he'll begin that process in Chicago after Trump's inauguration.
We're going to start right here in Chicago, Illinois. If your Chicago mayor doesn't want to help, he can step aside. But if he impedes us, if he knowingly harbors and conceals an illegal alien, I will prosecute him.
Homan made those comments tonight at Biagio's Banquets in Portage Park during a holiday party hosted by a local law enforcement PAC and the Northwest Side GOP Club.
So CBS Chicago reporting out there with the video, Homan saying that if Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson or Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is knowingly harboring illegal aliens, then Homan's going to prosecute him. Yesterday, Johnson was asked during a news event announcing a new one shelter system location with about 50 some odd beds for individuals who are unhoused. And he was asked specifically if this new shelter, this new one shelter system that Johnson announced not long ago, is also going to include non-citizen immigrants here in Chicago.
Well, it's a one shelter system. The whole purpose of the one shelter system was to ensure that we are treating every single human being with dignity. This is something that really speaks to the values of the people of Chicago. We took a crisis that was international and global, both with homelessness as well as global population shift. We have managed that crisis, and then we have built an entire system around it.
So Johnson saying that they will be housed at the facilities that are set up by Chicago. So would that be harboring illegal immigrants in Chicago? Interesting question. But Johnson was also asked yesterday at that event about some of Trump's policies and his position on immigration and mass deportations. But Johnson focused more on public housing.
The president-elect has a tremendous disdain for public accommodations, right? So it's not just his unwillingness to work with the current president and the current Congress to actually pass substantive immigration reform policy. He could do that in his position now if he would just simply encourage those House members that he forcefully press not to cooperate with the current administration.
So Johnson continues talking about what he wants Trump to do with public housing.
What I would ask the president to do is to think about the public housing he's going to have in another couple of weeks. And that every single individual who is seeking public housing in this country, the White House, which is public housing, that should be the standard.
So again, the White House should be the standard for those who are homeless to be able to have taxpayer-subsidized housing. Interesting. To Senator Durbin last week on the issue of immigration, he didn't necessarily talk about the issue of those and how they house migrants. He was focused more on the dreamers, the individuals who were given deferred action of childhood arrivals status, DACA, and the individuals who were brought here to the country illegally when they were children by their parents. Durbin last week kind of previewed a bit of what we can expect from a hearing that's set to happen later on this morning in the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. Here's Durbin talking about the DREAM Act.
23 years ago, I introduced the DREAM Act together with Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, who was then the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This bipartisan legislation was very simple. It provided a pathway to citizenship for young immigrants who were brought to the United States as infants, toddlers, and children, allowing them to remain legally in the country, the only home they ever knew, and to have a path to ultimate legality and citizenship.
Durbin went on to talk about Trump's position in all of this.
Today, as we hear dangerous rhetoric from the president-elect about immigration, I worry for the immigrants and for the future of our country. We can all agree that any undocumented immigrant found guilty of a serious crime should never be allowed to stay in the United States. But the last time the president-elect was in office, it wasn't just criminals who were deported. We saw parents separated from their young children.
Now, Durbin went on to talk about a variety of other issues. He made an example of one he called Dreamer that is now a productive member of society, but there's criticism that Durbin's had a picture taken with another Dreamer who faces a murder charge. So that's an interesting, kind of contrast, so to speak. But more on DACA. Here's Durbin on the Senate floor last week.
DACA was a program put together by President Obama to pave the way for Ms. Martinez to pursue her dreams. But DACA was always intended to be a temporary stopgap until Congress did its job and fixed the broken immigration system by law.
And we see this already in the courts over the past few years, and he says that now DACA's status is hanging by a thread.
But since President Obama established the program, Republicans have waged a relentless campaign to overturn DACA and deport these dreamers back to countries they do not even remember. Now this program is hanging by a thread in the courts due to legal challenges from Republican state attorneys general, and DACA recipients are forced to live with uncertainty day to day. Last year, a federal judge in Texas declared the DACA program illegal, though the decision left in place protections for current DACA recipients while the case is on appeal. Dreamers live in constant fear that the next decision will spend their lives. You and I have heard over and over again when President-elect Donald Trump came before his rallies and described the immigrants he wants to deport: murderers, rapists, terrorists, people with mental problems and such. He goes on, time and again. But of course, Ms. Martinez does not belong to any one of those categories. She has made a life in America and made America better.
And he goes on
the litigation that I'm concerned about.
Discuss the what he sees as legal threats against DACA. I mean, again, it was an Obama initiative. Congress didn't pass anything, and it's tied up in the courts right now. Should Congress pass that, he says he's going to work on getting the DREAM Act passed.
I'm going to do everything in my power to defend dreamers from being deported from the only country they call home. And I'm willing to work with anyone, including President-elect Trump, to pass legislation to give dreamers like Ms. Martinez a chance.
Is there a possibility that could happen? Well, on Meet the Press over the weekend with NBC, President-elect Donald Trump said that he would start by deporting criminals, violent individuals who are here as non-citizens. But he would also work to find a path for dreamers brought to the U.S. illegally as minors to remain. So what's that going to look like, especially with Durbin today holding a hearing that is with this title? This is the hearing that Durbin's going to be holding with the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, where Democrats still have the majority. How mass deportation will separate American families, harm our armed forces, and devastate our economy. So the idea of separating families, something else that Trump also tackled in the Meet the Press interview. He said that, there's an easy way to not separate families, and that is to deport all of them. So is that what it could possibly happen? Instead of leaving part of the family here and part of the family being deported. But at the same time, you've got Republicans. They, in the U.S. House, have this hearing that they have set. Given the green light, open border policies, and threats to law enforcement. So different ways that people are tackling this, but some of the results obviously alarming. HelloFresh is being investigated for child labor. Here's a headline from the Center Square. From Katrina Barker, Center Square contributor. As it was reported by ABC7, 6 teenagers from Guatemala found working night shifts at the factory. HelloFresh cutting ties with a staffing agency. The Illinois Department of Labor said no comment, but you have State Representative Chris Miller. He shared some comments about what he sees happening here with this story and how troubling it is for Republicans who see this far too often and the impacts of it. Here's Chris Miller talking to the Center Square.
They should start by throwing some of these politicians in jail and our governor in jail that are facilitating all of this nonsense.
And he ultimately called it state-sponsored child labor.
This is part of the multinational human sex trafficking and child labor ring.
And while you've got legislation at the State House that works to focus on protecting children in the labor force, recently signed and is going to be enacted come January, Miller says that especially with stories like what's going on at HelloFresh in Aurora, where they're being investigated for child labor, which could possibly be, immigrants. Miller says that, a lot of the legislation out there might just be feel good because we've got these horrendous stories being heard.
And now they're going to pretend like that they care and they're going to go try to clean it up. And it's all smoke and mirrors.
So we'll hear a lot more about this tomorrow. We'll review what the U.S. House and U.S. Senate committees on immigration have to say. So another a busy day here, but we'll report back to you all of the back and forth on this. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Join us each and every weekday morning as we go live to tape for Illinois in Focus Daily. A sitting U.S. Congresswoman testifying in a corruption trial that she did not facilitate job recommendations to benefit Madigan. Welcome back, Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Be sure to get the latest headlines at thecentersquare.com, where you can get the newsletter from Illinois. And be sure to wake up with us here for Illinois in Focus Daily. So we've been tracking this ongoing court case of former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan and co-defendant Michael McLean. Jim Talamonte's been in the courtroom all for weeks, since like early October. Brett Rowland also covering this. He was in there Monday. So let's get to some of what happened, of course, with Madigan arriving at the court. It's always interesting to see the former Illinois House Speaker. This is yesterday morning. He doesn't have that protester holding up the sign behind him.
Good morning.
So there's the former Illinois House Speaker entering the federal courtroom in Chicago. And what they had yesterday was a shortened day, including U.S. Representative Nikki Budzinski offering testimony. She took the stand at the public corruption trial of Madigan and McLean. Budzinski, a Democrat from Springfield, has represented Illinois' 13th congressional district since 2023. The incumbent won her re-election last month, and before being elected to Congress, she was a special assistant to Governor J.B. Pritzker. She worked on a transition team when Pritzker was governor-elect in late 2018 and 2019, and provided political advice on downstate issues. On the transition team, as Jim and Brett report, she helped go through 1,500 different candidates for state jobs, boards, and commissions on the governor's behalf. The governor had final say, but the senior advisor to Pritzker recommended people for administrative jobs. Budzinski testified that they had a very thorough vetting process, and she would send Pritzker a copy of the so-called Sphinx lists, and that was a multi-page list of names and jobs that were recommended by Madigan's office. Budzinski said she never understood the reason for the nickname. We gave serious consideration to those requests, she said. Last week, prosecutors played a recording from November 30th of then State Representative Mike Zaleski telling McLean that he had asked Madigan to help get his wife, Carrie, appointed to the ICC, the Illinois Commerce Commission.
I will tell you, I said to the speaker, I asked him to think about Carrie to go to the Illinois Commerce Commission.
Oh, okay.
She's getting a little stale with her job right now. She doesn't. I mean, she doesn't love it. She loves it a lot, but Pritzker gets 2 picks in January, and the pay is the same, so he wouldn't get a story for bumping her pay. He could say that she gets the same amount of money, and it's a good job. That's a good job. I mean, her job now is a good job, but that's a good job.
Yeah.
So he's probably got a lot on his plate. He hasn't reached out yet, but I put it a bug in his ear.
Yeah, good. So in the meantime, why don't you write him a note?
And the conversation goes on there, but you can listen to the entirety of that conversation at thecentersquare.com as we publish some of the stuff that prosecutors are revealing to the jury during this ongoing corruption trial. But it's clear that prosecutors are really looking to focus on these state appointments. It was a focus during the Daniel Solis testimony, but a professor, Tara Davis, at Bradley University, she said that prosecutors are really honing in on these job picks.
For sure. I think the defense team is really going to hone in on the prosecution trying to criminalize normal political activity, and that, this is normal, and this is not quid pro quo. This is just, the way things are and done.
And then on cross-examination yesterday with Budzinski on the stand, the only person to testify yesterday during a shortened day, they talked about the Sphinx list and generally had recommendations from Madigan and Pritzker, but Budzinski also said that she didn't feel required to hire Madigan's recommendations and wasn't worried about any backlash if she failed to hire one of Madigan's picks. She also said that she only hired people who were qualified. And that's in stark contrast to requests from co-defendant Mike McLean to ComEd regarding summer intern candidates. And we reviewed some of that where last year, the ComEd 4 really highlighted a lot of this with candidates for ComEd internships having poor grade point averages, and McLean just kind of asking that people look the other way on that, or getting that request in front of the decision makers at ComEd. So clearly a lot more is going to happen here with this trial, and we'll be keeping you posted, and you can get the headlines at thecentersquare.com. Again, thecentersquare.com. Get Illinois' newsletter each and every weekday morning in your inbox, but you can also wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus to get the latest each and every weekday morning as we break down things you need to know to get your day going. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air, and join us right here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Cook County lands Illinois at number 6 on the Judicial hellholes list. Good morning, Greg Bishop, Illinois in Focus with thecentersquare.com and America's Talking Network. Get the headlines at the Center Square. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. So what is the Judicial hellhole list? It's been going on for 22 years, and it's a list from American Tort Reform Association, which is focused on highlighting a variety of different problems with civil law that can cost taxpayers money, that can hurt the economy, and so on. But they report out the Judicial hellhole list. And if you go to the website, judicialhellholes.org, you'll see this for yourself, and you can click through and see the top 10. Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas and Pennsylvania's Supreme Court ranked number 1 for judicial hellholes. And then you get to New York, South Carolina, asbestos litigation, Georgia, California, but then there's Cook County, number 6, and you can get all the details there by getting to the Judicial hellholes website. They go through a lot, highlighting the statistics, where most of the civil cases are happening, even the trial lawyers and how much advertising they do. But I talked with Tiger Joyce. He's the president of American Tort Reform Association, and he lays out where Illinois lands on this list.
Hellholes are what we believe are the worst litigation jurisdictions in the country. It's from our perspective, they are the ones where we believe that equal justice under the law, which is etched on the facade of the U.S. Supreme Court, is either regularly not available or highly problematic at best. In Illinois, specifically Cook County, comes in at number 6 in our report this year, which we're pleased to roll out. And the purpose of this is to highlight what we believe are some of the worst litigation problems in a jurisdiction, and to bring public attention to them, and hopefully to serve as a catalyst. But in particular, we wanted to highlight Cook County, and I think if there's any one indication which really is a clear signal, it's the fact that not only is this our opinion that it's a problem, but it's the plaintiffs' lawyers that that agree, because I think even though I believe Cook County is about 40% of the state's population, it's the home for over 90% of the civil litigation in the state. It's the plaintiffs' lawyers and the plaintiffs that get to decide or begin where cases are to be brought, and this is where they want to come. And I think that in and of itself is obviously a very good. One of the things that we think also is worth highlighting is the impact that lawsuit abuse and the excesses of the civil justice system have on the average person. Because I've been a lawyer for a long time. There are, we have judges, we have other lawyers and others, and there's an easy tendency to think, well, this is really just a problem for lawyers. But the fact is that the average person in Cook County, really for a family of four, the cost of lawsuit abuse is nearly $10,000. That's the economic impact that it has. Nearly 200,000 jobs annually are not created, and the economy loses well over $21 billion per year. So these are real costs. Excessive lawsuit abuse and excessive litigation impacts the average person, not just the people who bring cases. Those numbers we highlighted in the report actually for Cook County. So specifically to Cook County, it's probably higher than it is throughout the rest of Illinois and throughout the rest of the country. Those numbers are pretty high, even compared to certainly compared to the rest of the country. I think the average family of four, around, if you took a national average in terms of its impact, is probably a little over $6,000. So that just gives you an idea of, in particular, why Cook County is highlighted in our report and why we think it's so problematic.
Again, this is Tiger Joyce, conversation I had with him last week on this report that was released this morning from American Tort Reform Association. And going back to the report for Cook County, just to highlight some of the other areas here, plaintiffs' lawyers' campaign contributions. We'll get to the reaction from the Plaintiffs' Trial Lawyers Association here in a bit. But they say that they're pouring millions of dollars into state political campaigns to preserve Illinois' favorable civil justice environment. From September 23 through September 24, the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association raised $616,000. They've raised $11.8 million since 1994. They talk about the no injury litigation, which we'll touch on that in a moment, but all the other things, food and beverage litigation, but also, they do mention nuclear verdicts, which are a high number dollars going out in awards and verdicts for plaintiffs suing on a host of things. Asbestos litigation, another one. St. Clair County and Madison County, they've been on the list before for judicial hellholes in Illinois, and in particular Madison County. Tiger Joyce says it's still on their radar.
I'd say it's probably more of a shift. I think we mentioned that Madison continues to be a focus for asbestos litigation, which it has been for quite some time. But I think from our perspective, when we look at the BIPA litigation, the biometric, the privacy related claims, the so-called no injury claims, food and beverage litigation, the matters and issues that we've chosen to highlight, I think are more located these days in Cook County. And that's not to say that there aren't still some issues in Madison, especially with the asbestos claims. But I think a lot of the activity has really moved more into Cook County.
So with Cook County obviously meaning some of the highest numbers for Illinois, again, 90% of the civil litigation With 40% of the population, they highlight that some of Illinois' laws were problematic. As detailed in last year's Judicial Hellholes report, the Illinois Supreme Court issued 2 rulings that led to a dramatic increase in Biometric Information Privacy Act filings. First, the court ruled BIPA lawsuits are subject to the state's catch-all statute of limitations, which provides 5 years to claim and no defined period, as opposed to the state's 1-year default statute of limitations for privacy actions. The High Court agreed with Cook County Circuit Court and held that the 5-year period applied. This facilitated substantially larger class actions. Just a few weeks later, the Illinois Supreme Court issued another ruling that expanded liability for businesses under BIPA. The ruling there was when the White Castle case, and the court ruled that BIPA claim accrues each time a business scans a person's biometric information and each time it's transferred to a third party, not only upon the first scan and first transmission. So since then, you had BIPA filings jump 65%, but to reverse course, to reverse the trend of Illinois, landing on last year was number 2 for judicial hellholes. Tiger Joyce says that Illinois legislators did help reverse the trend a bit to make Illinois now not number 2, but number 6 on the judicial hellholes list.
Well, I think that, I have to say we have to give a little credit to your legislature, which actually has enacted some changes specifically on the BIPA legislation, which falls under the heading of a really problematic area we call no injury litigation. This is just the piling up of claims over the use of biometric information. Even in the absence of demonstrating anybody suffering any actual economic injury. So the legislature's taken some steps there with the governor's support. But this broader issue of no injury litigation is a problem. Another issue that we would highlight would be with your state attorney general is urging the Illinois Supreme Court to basically do away with what the technical legal term is venue or forum non-conveniens, the Latin for trying to ensure that there's a relationship between where a case can be brought and where the underlying harm or the parties took place or the parties reside. If you look at our report on Pennsylvania, that's been which has been one at the top of the hellhole list for the last several years. That's been an enormous problem, and sometimes what would seem to be the simplest matter, where can a case be brought, can get right to the heart of where some of the problems are and addressing them. And oftentimes, when we get asked about how do you solve the judicial hellhole problem, oftentimes it's simply a case of where can cases be brought. So when you have the attorney general petitioning or filing a brief encouraging the doing away with these provisions which try to ensure that cases be brought where they should be brought, that would be a problem. So we hope that the Supreme Court will do the right thing. Another issue that I would highlight is in sort of we call sort of the mass torts area, is the question of expert evidence. There was a case in Cook County, which we highlight in the report, dealing with allegations of that talcum powder or talc causes cancer. And a key issue in that case was the experts that the judge in the case allowed, or in some instances didn't allow to testify. The plaintiffs had an expert who not only was talking about the relationship between talc and causing cancer, but was speculating about how to mine for talc and all kinds of things, which I think it's pretty safe to say had no knowledge of, certainly was not professionally allowed or had any background in. By contrast, the chief medical officer for Johnson & Johnson was severely limited in his ability to testify. And I think it's important, if you're a juror, if you're listening to this kind of evidence, it's very this sort of highly technical, professional, scientific information is very, very important. and it's up to the judges to police their courts. The federal judges are now required to do that. State judges should be following suit. But in that case, which resulted in a verdict of, I think, about $45 million, really the defendants were not allowed. They had an expert on pulmonary disease and causation, was not allowed to testify. As I said, the defendant also had their chief medical officer, was severely limited. By contrast, this expert for the plaintiffs was allowed to speculate on matters well outside of his expertise. And so when you have inequities like that in mass tort cases and cases like that, you're going to end up with what we think are inappropriate results.
So again, Tiger Joyce, president of American Tort Reform Association, their report out today, Judicial Hellholes, and they do focus on the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association, talking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars they spend on advertising, $18.9 million on TV, print, radio, digital, outdoor advertising. Last time I drove through Chicago, there's a stretch there on the highway where it's like 3 miles of just both sides, multiple different, civil litigation attorneys' advertisements, all up and down the highway. Surely you guys are familiar with that as well. But again, we also touched on how the ATRA focuses on political contributions from the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association. Well, I reached out to the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association for a comment on this. And this is what they had to say. This bogus report coming from Sarah Salger, the president of the ILTA. This bogus report typically makes many colorful allegations while throwing around statistics, but providing no backup data that can be fact-checked. Without having seen the actual report in advance, we assume it's the same old recycled publicity stunt that ATRA does year after year to demean the U.S. Constitution by attacking citizens' Seventh Amendment rights to trial by jury. It's nothing more than ATRA's ongoing campaign to deny access to the court system that our tax dollars fund. Well, I got a reaction from Joyce because previous statements I had gotten from the Trial Lawyers Association to previous judicial hellhole reports would indicate this is a front group for big business. So getting Joyce's reaction to some of the pushback from the trial lawyers.
Well, I think let's hear them rebut the points that I just made. Let's hear them rebut the fact that well over 90% of the cases are brought in Cook County, even though Cook County represents only 40% of the population. Let's hear them talk about the differences between what we see on expert evidence in terms of of how judges should properly police their courtrooms in terms of scientific and other technical evidence. Those are the issues that we're focusing on. When people have suffered injuries, and I should say, even going to the food and beverage litigation and the BIPA litigation that we talk about, how about let's just require that litigation be a focus of people who've actually suffered losses, rather than people where something may have taken place, but there has been no injury in those cases. And we're happy to debate those issues. And if you look at at who supports legal reform, you'll see small businesses, you'll see service providers, the commercial transportation industry, which is vital to our supply chains, and all of our sort of daily lives and deliver things to our front doors. There's a widespread support, in addition to big businesses, for legal reform. And we hope that the issues that we raise here, the plaintiffs' bar can dismiss them all they want, but we hope that the leaders in your state will listen to these matters and understand and agree with us. We hope we're persuasive in these matters, and I'm sure the trial bar will be active in trying to demonstrate the case to the contrary.
Tiger Joyce, president of American Tort Reform Association, with that new Judicial Hellholes report out now. You can go read that for yourself and focus in on all of the different judicial hellholes that they've listed. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. With us each and every weekday morning here with America's Talking Network. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Busy day today. Several congressional hearings that I'm going to be monitoring. But you've also got a conversation with an Illinois House committee talking about psychedelic therapy. That's right, using hallucinogens like psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms, in therapy. So we may bring you some of the highlights from that conversation as well. It's right here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Each and every weekday morning, wake up with us with America's Talking Network and get the newsletter in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. Don't forget to get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus. Have a great... It is Tuesday, right? Yeah, okay, just make sure. We'll see you tomorrow.